God made the world out of his wisdom to be of mountains and valleys, high and low. He could easily have made the whole world just one flat place. But if he had done it that way, rivers will not flow. So in life, there's always high and low. Mountain top, and then valley below. In mathematics, we call the mountain top the upper turning point, because that's the place you get to. And then if you go beyond that, you can only be coming down. And then the valley we call the lower turning point. If you turn from there, you can only go higher. That's why the elders will tell you that a change is good for the poor. Because if the poor changes, it means they will become rich. But it's not good for the rich. Because if the rich begins to come, we can only go lower and lower. I'm praying for all of us who are here today, that from this moment onward, we'll be going higher. The interesting thing is, when you go through the scriptures, you will find that every turning point is related to an encounter. If you have an encounter with God, then your valley experience will come to an end. You begin from that moment onward to go higher. When I was 40 years old, God showed me a vision, knowing that he had trained me to be a mathematician. He showed me two graphs. The first graph was the graph of a valley, which in mathematics we will call head-down parabola. The other one is the graph of a hill, which in mathematics we will call head-up parabola. And he asked me to choose one of the two. At the turning point of both was 40. And I knew God was asking me to decide, where do you want to go from here? Upward or downward? Of course, by his grace and with the training I've already had, I chose the head-down parabola because it means from this day onward, I'll be climbing. Then he said to me, all right, if you choose that, then we have to do certain things. You have to remove, because in those days, if you come to Ebute Metta, there's a name plate on my table. When you come in, you will see the name, Reverend Dr. E.A. Adeboye, BSc, MSc, PhD. And he said to me, all right, if you decide to make 40 your real turning point, head down turning point, then we have to get rid of all these titles. Reverend has to go. Doctor has to go. All these degrees, we have to forget them. And your title from now will remain pastor. We move from practically zero and begin to climb. Glory be to God. From that moment onward, we are still climbing. I am believing God with you that if you will choose the head-down parabola, if you will forget if you throw aside your pride, throw aside all your big manism, and start from the bottom today. Next time I see you, you'll be higher than this. Turning point can be very good for someone who is in sorrow. Because if you are in sorrow and you have an encounter with my Lord, from that day onward, you won't know sorrow again. In Luke chapter 7, from verse 11 to 15, Luke 7, 11 to 15, we have the story of a widow who had an only son, and the only son died. And she was on the way to go and bury that boy when she had an encounter with Jesus. She used to know joy. She was glad the day she got married. She was glad the day she had that boy. But then the devil struck, took away the husband, and her sorrow began. And then now went ahead and took the only son. And they were going to bury that only son when a turning point came. She had an encounter with Jesus Christ. The boy that was dead was brought back to life. And from that day onward, she never knew sorrow again. I'm praying for someone here today. This is the last time you will weep for sorrow. When you have this encounter with Jesus Christ, then you can move from failure to success. In Luke chapter 5, from verse 1 to 7, Luke 5 from verse 1 to 7, the Bible tells us the story of a man who had fished all night and caught nothing. You know his name, Peter. Then he had an encounter with Jesus Christ. And from that day onward, life changed for him. He caught so much fish he couldn't handle the fish alone. You know, I've always prophesied to my children that a day will come when you want to take your money to the bank. In those days, of course, everything was cash, not POS. And so you will need somebody to help you. I've always prophesied to my children that a time will come, if you tell a bank manager that you want to withdraw all your money, he will run to the toilet. And as I am saying that today, somebody's already catching that. Now, of course, you will begin to say, how can that be? When God says he's going to do something, I want you, Don't use your brain to try to understand how can it happen. Because once God has spoken, He will bring all the forces in heaven and on earth into action. Let me put it this way. There is someone here listening to me today. Very soon, the whole nation will be envious of you. When I became general overseer, we were very rich as a church. I mean, very rich. And then there was one of us who was a tailor. He came to me and said, I want to serve God, but I don't have money. If you can just get the material, anytime you're able to get material, I will sew suits for you. I have the ability. You get the material and leave the rest to me. And I said to him, son, because you have decided to do this, a day will come when you take your money to the bank manager will call you and say, where do you get this money from? What kind of job do you say you are doing? Like I said, in those days, they pay you in cash. And then he began to do it. Of course, he said amen. By, the kind of amen some people say to say, all right, to go on amusing us. And then somehow he got connected to someone. And Nigeria was going, I think, either to the Olympics or whatever. And they gave him the assignment to sew the dress for all those who are going. And he sewed the dress and they paid him. When he took his money to the bank manager said, I want to see this young man. I know him. Ask him to see me. Son, I thought you say you are a Christian. He said, you know that for sure. How come? Where do you get this money from? And then he remembered Daddy prophesied. I'm prophesying to someone today, financially speaking, today will be your turning point.